Welcome back, everybody. The Smite Minor League continues. I'm still on the desk, but this time I'm joined by Anatoly. And then we've got another really good matchup. We say that a lot because basically all the matchups in the Minor League are really good right now. We saw a really close match between OutCold and Flashpoint. Now we've got Simplicity up against Queso.
And the thing is, in the European Minor League, all these teams are tied at 1-1 before that last set where it was very back and forth between OutCold Gaming and also Flashpoint. But this one could also have a similar tale.
I think so, too. I think that any team could beat any team in the European Minor League at this point, but that much has been proven because they were all 1-1. But getting this Week 3 victory is absolutely critical in order to set yourself apart from that competition. And Queso started off a little bit weaker in Week 1, but definitely got stronger when it came to Week 2. This Queso roster, the Spanish Armada, as maniaKK called them, this is a really, really strong group.
They did defeat the OutCold Gaming in week number 2, losing to Flashpoint in week number 1, trying to really prove themselves here in week number 3. And this is a good opportunity for them, knowing the fact that Simplicity might have a little bit of roster issues with fails, not completely present. I like the positioning from Warchi on certain occasions. He really likes the Agni. In fact, actually all the European minor league players love this Agni in the mid lane.
Yeah, with fails not here, I think that this Queso roster has a much better chance to just show their stuff in this game. Fail's definitely a big part of what Simplicity usually likes to do. And this Queso roster is one that I think is really built on teamwork and working together. I don't think that, unlike a team like Flashpoint, where every time they win an easy game, it's, oh, Johnny probably did the majority of the work. I don't think that Queso has a true star, and I think in a lot of ways it's a strength.
I agree. I think that Dracomarino that we just saw on the support, he likes to, get in the thick of things, keep his backliners alive, but it's also still enabled to make the offensive plays. We all know Julio loves to be aggressive on all his warriors that he selects, going for the Mage's Blessing, actually even transitioning that into a weird boots with Traveler Shoes. So it's interesting to see how the identity of all these individual players make up what is Queso today.
But Queso has their work cut out for them because Simplicity, even without fails, is a pretty strong roster. I think maniaKK has played really, really well for them in the solo lane during his time in the minor league. Obviously, maniaKK spent all of last year with energy and was at the World Championships and played very well. But this roster, I think, really does usually revolve around maniaKK and fails together. Without fails here, I'm looking at guys like StreakUp, like Genetics, and like DeathPanter to step up and carry a little bit more of the load.
I was about to make that point because jungle is not one of these positions that you could just plug and play to make it a lot easier for the rest of the teammates. It's jungle and support that are making most of the shot callings.
Sure.
They're the players that need to make the offensive plays and know when it's time to switch it on. So Froisan might be maybe intimidated. It's kind of interesting to see how he'll kind of start off game number 1.
Well, let's see. Picks and bans ready now for game number 1 between these two teams. Queso, as you mentioned, seems to really highlight getting Warchi, one of his gods, early on. If he can get his hands on something like Freya, then he'll certainly take it. But Agni seems to be one of his go-tos.
No problem with Agni, honestly. Like, I don't think they're going to first pick the Agni with the likes of Freya's, Arthur's, maybe Vamana's, depending on how these teams prefer to pick him. But at the end of the day, you get Warchi in a comfortable spot, and then he's just going to be able to play setup man from there.
King Arthur, the first ban right away by Team Queso. After Dimmy's performance in the last game, we can certainly see why.
Oh, yeah.
And AMC, we've seen a lot more AMC picks and bans recently. Why do you think that is?
So with Runeforged Hammer, it's very easy to, apply the slow from the honey, get that 15% extra damage. Even the cripple in itself from the stinger is enough to apply that damage. You're getting 55 power from this item, and that's going to enable you to use the scaling from your second ability. All the scaling of his abilities is just so high.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense, but he's banned away. Instead, it's Xbalanque in that first pick, something that we've seen quite a bit of, but there are some pretty potent picks still on the table. Bacchus still available.
Yep.
King Arthur's banned, but we might see something along a little bit closer towards a support role, but there it is. Agni taken away from Queso very, very early on, but I'm sure DeathPanter's very comfortable on this god. He's played it quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that he has no qualms about it. And I know that Hera is available, but I think this is a shot that Simplicity is taking at Warchi as opposed to trying to get the newest mid-mage that's currently at least allowed in the SML.
Agni Vamana looks like a pretty good first 2, and then Arachne right away. Arachne carried a game for Team Queso last week. Yeah. And they played really, really well with it. WorstTurttle in particular, he was the one who played it. I don't imagine it's going anywhere else this time around. It's a little early for me, but there's a pretty good chance in my mind that Simplicity would abandon it in the second phase, so you got to take it before they can.
I guess so, yeah. Since Simplicity have taken the Agni thus far, it wouldn't surprise me if they were to ban away this Arachne. And from their draft against the Arachne, they know they need to protect their backline, so
Yes.
Khepri, no hesitation. There was a Geb available as well, but I like the Khepri.
A lot of Khepri recently as well, even over the Bacchus a lot of the times. It just feels like the more defensive option. Those two, in my mind, seem to be the best two supports right now. It's just a matter of if you want to be more offensive in the Bacchus or more defensive with the Khepri.
And off of this Khepri pick, banning away the Achilles, taking away that execute option, making the Scarab's Blessing revive a little bit more effective, not worrying about that execute. Still have to worry about Ao Kuang and Thanatos potentially with Arachne already locked in. Those two gods would have to be in that solo lane.
Kuzenbo, the other ban by Simplicity, something that Dracomarino's played a decent amount of so far this year, and is one of the more disruptive ultimates for Khepri when he's trying to get that Scarab's Blessing. There's not a lot of ways to play around Scarab's Blessing in the early game or even through the mid or late, but disruption is the biggest one, making sure you're CCing the Khepri and killing the carry at the same time, and Watery Grave does that very well, so I like that ban by Simplicity.
It's just a very popular pick, I think, for everyone in the North America, in the European minor league. Very disruptive, like you were mentioning. Also, when you have a Khepri with Vamana, you want to make sure that he's going to be in a comfortable position, diving that backline, not getting Sumo Slam to high heavens. And global pressure now. We saw last game with the Mercury. This time it's going to be the Ratatoskr.
Ratatoskr is a pick that Simplicity's played, but again, it's usually fails in that slot. It's kind of a stylistic question. If you've got a sub, do you give them a pick like Ratatoskr that isn't a super high execution god that they can just kind of run around in the early game and do their thing? Or do you give them a god that doesn't require so much pressure to be had in the early game because his late game is going to fall off?
I think the counter engage is important for this Ratatoskr. This is going to enable now for Froisan to be anywhere he wants on the map and still use that global pressure to get in the thick of things. So even if Queso is going to be forcing the issue, Froisan's not going to be too far behind.
Chronos going to be the last pick here for Simplicity, a pick that has fallen a little bit out of favor, but I'm starting to hear some things about this thing. Are you a believer in the Arachne? Do you think Queso takes game one behind the bug?
I think I do believe in the Arachne only because of every other pick surrounding this Arachne from Queso.
Julio gets his tier as well. Some signature picks for Team Queso, but is it enough to take down Simplicity in game one? So to the casters to find out.
We certainly will find out. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks, Toli, as well on the desk. It's Finch and Taco on the call as we move into Queso up against Simplicity. And look at these ships passing each other in the night. Big groupings in the jungle, but it looks like we might not have much come from it. Actually, they could run into WorstTurttle, who spots them, falls back, and everything should be okay.
They know where each other is at, but neither side really interested in going on the aggressive just yet. And for good reason. I think that it would probably just be a toss-up. I don't think that anybody would really die, but I would have to expect Team Queso to have the advantage in a level 1 brawl.
Yeah, if you got the Arachne, almost certainly I feel like I want to give it to you. WorstTurttle has picked this in the jungle, or an impressive boxer. It's going to be Froisan over there that's going to be going up against him on the Ratatoskr. You see he went with the tier 2, the Acorn, almost certainly going to be upgrading that once he's done clearing about this first camp and a half or so. And then he'll have his full-on Acorn, giving him a small power spike out in front of WorstTurttle.
The Arachne pick also, I think, might have been another reason why Simplicity wanted to do that group roaming early on, just to make sure that she wasn't looking for any cheeky invades like WorstTurttle is going for right now.
Wow.
Blue buff having already been dropped, but it's just too late. maniaK's got no one here to play on the defensive for him. Froisan just finished doing speed, was about to start on his back Harpies, and won't even get able to do that.
No, it's so difficult to try and stop Arachne from doing exactly this. Look, Simplicity had a ward all the way down there on the order side to keep an eye on where this Arachne is going to be going when she was done with that speed buff, to make sure she wasn't looking for any sneaky rotations. And even still, there was nothing they could do. WorstTurtle's able to bully a little bit in this early game.
I think that ward is a little bit too close, though, to the speed buff. It doesn't really give good insight as to whether or not WorstTurtle is going to go to Julio's blue buff, or if he's going to maybe just continue his wraparound like what we just saw and instead push into the blue buff of maniaKK.
Yeah, it only confirms that she's not going to the duo side, right?
That's
I guess
about
it's all, yeah. So maybe that's all you can get from that very first one. But they've given up some farm. The important thing, I feel like, Taco, is that they aren't giving up multiple rotations of those buffs. They know that WorstTurtle's looking for that blue buff, got to defend on the right side.
Although, it's going to be rather difficult, I think, for Simplicity to have a clean defense of their buffs every single time, simply because Arachne is just so frustrating trying to work around the webs, the slows especially, and when your dual lane is Khepri Chronos, that doesn't really offer a whole lot in terms of the defensive front.
That's right. If these two are the ones rotating over, then especially someone like a Khepri could potentially be in more trouble than he's even alleviating. Because when you're in that grab, yes, you are silenced, so to speak, but Arachne doesn't care all that much. WorstTurttle can keep going with those autos in the grab and still cause problems. So you're right, they might not even have the best matchups for slowing him down, as he does get that second spawn of the speed buff.
Just a little bit of power farming, I think, right now for WorstTurttle, really trying to rush into that level 5. Curious to see whether or not this Katana tree start is going to wind up as a Golden Blade or possibly even a early Hasten, but I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards the Golden Blade start just because it assists Arachne for her clear.
Well, this time Ratatoskr was here, and that should be the buff defended. But what about maniaKK pushed into the wall by Julio early on? He does have the dash, even with the slow, but it's the blink coming in for WorstTurttle. That sets up first blood for Team Queso.
That felt weird from WorstTurttle, and I understand it now. He disengages from maniaKK, allows the spiders just to chase him for that slight slow, but all that WorstTurttle was really after was that blink. He was full on expecting to blink onto maniaKK there. I think that was just a simple outplay.
Yeah, it was well calculated by WorstTurttle, knowing that would be the best way to catch him with the dash, and that they would not be able to kill him, probably because of the knock-up inside that pit.
But that is absolute worst-case scenario now if you're maniaKK. You not only lose your blue buff, but Julio gets the experience and gold from the blue buff. Julio also gets the assist gold from WorstTurttle picking up the kill onto maniaKK, and it was a first blood bounty for an Arachne, probably one of the worst guys you could ever give that kind of lead to.
It does feel very scary when an Arachne's already able to get the ground running. And you were wondering, what's this Katana tree start? How's that going to work out for WorstTurttle? Well, right into the Hasten Katana early on, so that he'll have plenty of chase down potential. Sometimes you see Arachnes not bother with it because they do so much work with the slows that you're not too worried about sticking on your targets, but WorstTurtle's going to make sure he's on whoever he attacks.
Yeah, it was one of those two pathways that we mentioned where I wasn't completely sold on it being a Hasten or a Golden Blade either way. Leaned a little bit more towards the Golden Blade, but
yes,
you know, that Caster's Curse just has to come back to you somehow. So seeing the Hasten Katana on WorstTurttle, I think my only concern here is that it's still probably going to be difficult to commit to gods like DeathPanter or even StreakUp just because these mages have such strong survivability in their kits already. And chasing down an Agni in his own flame path isn't necessarily ideal.
No, it doesn't. It definitely isn't going to feel good. Bugs don't like the fire, I'd have to imagine. As there is another rotation over, but it's a much heftier one this time. Even Genetics is here to try and defend the blue buff spawn this time. They'll even drop the ultimate from Chekio to help out maniaKK responds by going up into the Colossal Fury, but it's too little too late. The blue buff already dropped, and Team Queso already gone.
And Warchi, just in case, hey boys, got a problem? Here's portals, in case you need them. So, thoughtful thinking, or wishful thinking I should say, from Simplicity trying to help their soul laner defend his buff, but this aggressive core comp that Team Queso have drafted for just is allowing them to, I think, continuously profit off of this solo buff invade because there's such low pressure in the dual lane. StreakUp isn't going to go to a Gold Fury and be like, yo, DeathPanter, let's take this real quick.
Right.
You don't do that with Chronos, not at 5.5 minutes into a game. So WorstTurttle and Julio especially are just going to continue building up these leads. What needs to happen now is if they want to defend that blue buff, DeathPanter is going to have to commit a rotation, but then there might be some other repercussions that come as a result of that.
That's right, if you end up giving up too much overcommitting to the defense. And kind of to that point, we got the experience charts here. I wonder where Genetics and Draco were before that rotation, because he is a good bit in terms of XP per minute behind Dracomarino now, Genetics, because he rotated over to try and be that extra man there to help defend the blue buff, but they weren't able to do it. So it's kind of like time wasted and it's a bit of a gamble you take when you try and commit in to defend your buffs.
Oh no, maniaKK dashing straight into WorstTurttle, trying to buy himself a little bit of time here. Fearless is good though from Julio, but right up in the sky, he's got backup.
Froisan's up in the air, lands right down on top of the bug, but then WorstTurttle goes up to the sky. He's got the webs, and that'll get him out. But there's still going to be a skirmish on the back end. Dracomarino is the target. A much-needed kill from maniaKK as Draco goes down, but can they find more? Big Baby stomping on top of Julio, but he should be out at this point as long as he keeps on running.
I think Julio might have been expecting to grab that portal there, but fortunately enough for him, not really much punishment to follow. Dracomarino ends up doing what all supports love to do, die for their carries. And while it might not have been a needed death, I definitely love seeing that rotation from DeathPanter. That's exactly what we were waiting on, and that
Right.
Agni bomb damage made a huge difference.
Something to punish this hefty commitment to the side of the map as Warchi gets caught trying to make it into the portal. They can't stop him forever, but they do make him pay well over half his life. And now Warchi might have to contemplate if it's even worth sticking around. His red buff has just spawned. I imagine he'll go grab that before he backs here.
Gotta be careful though if you're Warchi. You don't want to make it too obvious that you're going into the jungle because you never know who might be waiting around a corner. Froisan on this Ratatoskr, it's not uncommon to see rats looking for those early ultimates into red buff invades
Right.
for not only a possibility to steal, but possibility to kill.
Absolutely. Ratatoskr is one of those gods you have to know when that ultimate's up because it can be such a threat from nearly anywhere if you don't have at least some idea of which part of the map he's in. So Warchi plays that one safe, is able to collect his buff and make it back. So a nice play from Genetics in the middle lane to catch him out, but it doesn't really end up gaining them much of anything.
And of course we did just see Froisan invest that ultimate not too long ago, so Warchi also probably understanding that that was still on cooldown. It's just never easy at a competitive level to go into even your own jungle assuming that it's safe, because the one thing that you should always assume is that your life is in danger.
Especially if you're being obvious about it, which I think is your point, right? You don't want to give too much information to the other team, really, if you don't have to at all. So if Warchi takes the obvious path, then the rest, then Simplicity's going, well, he's going to red buff. Maybe even just like now they have the timer and you don't want to give that information away, as Genetics avoids the stun and the ultimate.
The best juke is no juke. Jukes the Xbalanque ult stun by standing still, and conveniently Warchi's as well. I gotta say, Genetics is just showing off at this point.
Yeah, I got the 300 IQ outplay there from Genetics on the Khepri. Not the easiest god with which to dodge abilities, and he manages to make it happen as the game is still relatively close. I say that, it is about 2,000 or so gold favoring Queso this early, as maniaKK walks right up to the edge, doesn't he, of life and death. But I got to imagine it's these repeated invades that are helping Queso out.
It is definitely the repeated invades that are giving Queso this slight edge. It's given Julio a massive edge in the solo lane. I mean, maniaKK has played this game so restricted.
Whoa.
Julio now even looking to ult onto Froisan. All they want to do is this right here, though. Force this Ratatoskr ultimate away. Still continue to possibly threaten the blue buff, but after realizing that there's a potential for a rotation out of DeathPanter, it's time to go home.
It's 2-for-1 ultimates traded as WorstTurttle holds onto his, but both solo laners and Froisan use theirs. But they secure their buff for the first time, it feels like, in forever. So I gotta think that's probably worth it if you're on Simplicity's side. There's not much else they were looking to do anyway, and you at least get that far.
All Julio is after right now, I think, is just keeping maniaKK unsteady, because if Simplicity continue to throw Froisan and Genetics into the jungle near that right side, early on for the first 10 minutes, that's fine. And that's a reasonable response to all of these continuous invades. This is another problem with Arachne, by the way. It's those objectives that you really have to keep an eye on in the early game. And getting back to what I was just talking about, because this is all going to be added into the same relevancy, but Julio is basically just constantly threatening Simplicity into the mentality of we need to be on solo side. But if Simplicity continues to make those rotations, well, eventually Dracomarino and Chekio, they're going to be able to just drop that Gold Fury.
They absolutely can. Even if WorstTurttle is able to kind of bait out a rotation, it could be a punishment. As WorstTurtle's caught, WorstTurtle is absolutely gone. Warchi's ultimate was going to be there, but it didn't get there in time, and that is finally a dead bug.
Perfect placement, though, that portal.
It would have been very helpful.
A second or two longer, and WorstTurttle was out of there. Possibly. There was DeathPanter and Genetics waiting at the other choke point mount, but right now, Warchi, he's on the run, looking for a portal to safety. Nice peel from Dracomarino. In fact, he's just going to go ahead and kill Froisan for his mid laner instead.
Yeah, killing is the best form of peel, I would imagine, as there's nothing that this Ratatoskr can do anymore. This Bacchus, with the pin boot start, man, he's swinging already. What a strong god right now.
He really just got bopped on the noggin.
Oh, yeah.
By a jug of wine.
Yeah, he did.
He drowned. Is that what alcohol poisoning looks like, Finch?
I suppose so. So the flavor of that ability, Taco, is that Bacchus breaks the bottle, like his jug of wine.
It's a Mike's
And
hard.
then he's like mad about it. It's Mike's.
It's gotta be. Loose off the Mikeys.
Yeah, maybe that's what's happening. Draco is 19, I guess, in this situation, or 21, just at that age. But either way, we'll see. Oh, maybe it's in here. Good call, Doug. Maybe it's listed in Intoxicate what's in there. I imagine it's just one.
I'm gonna pretend it's Mike's hard.
Sure.
It makes me feel better.
Mike's hard's all right. I feel like I'm kind of old for it. Taco, you and I are the youngest ones here, you know? At least of the caster team. We're the youngins.
Yeah, but that doesn't really count.
You don't think so?
No. I've looked like I'm 17 for like 4 years now. I've been the height of a toddler for like 20, so
I'll let you handle that one.
I don't really consider it an advantage.
Taco, you are the perfect height for what Taco needs to do, I suppose. As WorstTurttle has finished the Hasten Katana, where's he going now, I suppose, with this build? I guess it has to be
Runeforge.
Runeforge
Or-
at this point, yeah.
Yeah, I think
It could
the
be
Runeforge
Frostbound still, but yeah.
possibility. I mean, Frostbound gives a lot of nice health, and the slow would just be stupidly obnoxious. Yes, but I like the idea of a Runeforge here, most because of the fact that Arachne is going to be slowing her targets anyway, and getting that boosted 15% of damage, that's kind of wanted.
Yes, it is very nice, and that's why you're starting to see that item just about everywhere, though not in the Hunter build for this Xbalanque this time. He's elected for the Transcendence into Aussie, a build we actually don't see as much of anymore. Aussie, while it's nice as sort of a stopgap, doesn't often feel like a good enough item to be fully in your build. It is getting a tier 3 form soon in a
Aussie heard
6-4,
you.
but
All
not
the
right
hunters heard you. All
Yeah.
right. Chekio is just prepping. He was watching patch notes.
Right, he's like, I'm prepping to have it in my build because I'm going to
Keep
have
that
that tier
update
3.
show.
That's right.
I mean, my man's is getting ready. He is trying to theory craft the best of his ability, but also the Aussie here is just nice to have some form of lifesteal
Yes.
against a mage matchup in that duo lane. Julio, though, gotta be careful here. This blue buff could cause trouble.
Yeah, Julio is where he wants to be, but maybe he shouldn't want to be here. Maniac's going to continue to chase him down. Up into the air goes the Ratatoskr, but he's able to follow no problem. It is the World Tree after all, but one more portal from Warchi gets him out of there. This Janus, man, is a get-out-of-free card. And look at Czechia. If he pairs up with WorstTurttle, they might have a chance on that Gold Fury.
But StreakUp here to spoil the fun for those two. He's not going to let any free Gold Furies happen. That Sentry Ward also might be helping StreakUp just a little bit, but keeping vision crucial whenever there's Arachne on the map. We already saw what happened when Simplicity didn't have ward coverage over that Pyromancer. It took WorstTurttle and Julio all of 45 seconds to bring that one down, so I would imagine it'd be the same case scenario if Team Queso are ever left to their own devices with that Gold Fury.
That's something they have to keep in the back of their mind for Simplicity, is that these objectives can go down quite quickly. Also keep in the back of our mind that WorstTurttle now is a completed Runeforge, so WorstTurttle buying probably just the better item, though maybe slightly boring. Would have been nice to see a
You really want
Frostbound.
that Frostbound, don't you? You just want to see
Listen,
the world burn,
I
Finch.
miss Hasten Katana Frostbound on my
I don't think anybody misses that. You
It's
might
just me.
you might be alone in that one, pal. I'm not gonna lie.
What a time. What a time to play Smite.
What if he gets the Frostbound after the Runeforge? That's a
That's the
happy
ideal.
medium, as Tom would say.
I'd be okay with that because he does have the Hasten Katana. It would take me back to those days when I could think that I'm really good, but really I just have Frostbound Hasten Katana.
Sorry, I feel personally attacked right now over my Hunter career of Fatalis.
Old sprint as well, giving that great effect.
You don't
The
like
gas
that every
pedal.
30 seconds? I love
loved-
that.
Yeah. Playing Hunter too, but in just slightly less good games than Utaka is what I was doing. We get back in the action.
Debatable, by the way.
I say action. In 16 minutes, we've only had 4 kills as Gold Fury gets threatened one more time. Draco's already used the flop at this point. and that means the Gold Fury shall be dropped. But that doesn't mean Julio's dropping. He's going right on in, gets caught by the stun immediately. But they come back to the Gold Fury, and look how fast this Arachne burns through it. It's already down. Gold Fury for Queso, but what about the fight?
And that's what Darkest Night is all about, but the fight after the fact is another case entirely. Dracomarino just blown up in an instant. Froisan gonna get credit for that one. Julio's still on the run. There goes Lawbringer over the wall, but he's still not out of the danger just yet.
He's got to keep right on running. Simplicity are looking for some kind of way to make things even. And I think a red buff dropping into their laps is pretty good. They'll pick that up. In fact, they're pushing right to the middle lane. I wonder if they want to force down this tier 1 in response.
All I'm saying, it doesn't matter what's happening on the map right now because WorstTurttle, all he cared about was that speed buff.
Is that where he went?
His team is just like, please help us. But WorstTurtle got to get that speed. All jokes aside, though, WorstTurtle really on the run.
He's zooming.
For his life right now. In all fairness, there was really nothing more he could have contributed to the team fight that happened after the Gold Fury, so I completely understand why he went to the gold or to the speed buff after the break. But it's just funny to always see the jungler there.
That is the most important buff on the map for them, as it ends up being a Gold Fury for Queso, but it's a kill for Simplicity, the red buff invade, mid-tier 1 tower, and the Pyromancer tackle. I mean, who comes out on top in that one? Because it kind of feels like Simplicity.
I think Simplicity won the battle, but the war has just begun.
That's fair to say.
Getting the T1 tower, though, just opens up so much map pressure here for Simplicity. DeathPanter, I think, is going to have a significantly easier time with trying to keep Warchi out of the mid lane because he can actually push up. His tower is still not as healthy as he would probably like it to be, but a little bit under the 50% mark. You're still chilling as an Agni, and you can still rely on that T1 as a safety net. But that's not the case now for Warchi, and Simplicity might just be looking to force out that through space in time, and if they're able to pull out Warchi's actives and his ult, that'll make it so that Simplicity can then look to punish elsewhere on the map.
That'll be the plan. Look at DeathPanter's build, Taco. There's a lot of pen in there already. Spear the Magus and the Divine Ruin. I wonder if he is trying to facilitate for StreakUp here to have some follow-up once those two get to actually sync up and fight together.
What a chunk of health, though. 486 off of that Unstable Vortex, and it took out a third of DeathPanter's life bar.
Yeah.
That's kind of gross, but fun with mages. And I think that these two mages, it's kind of cool to see them both rocking the Divine Ruin. Warchi, though, I think going to have a little bit of a tougher time in comparison to DeathPanter as far as applying it is concerned.
Yes, it'll be easier
but
for the Agni. Yeah.
the fact that the self-sustain from an Arachne and tier is that threatening that DeathPanter would warrant a Divine Ruin in that third item slot, that says a lot about the potency, I think, of WorstTurttle on this Arachne. And Simplicity have really got to watch their backs here.
I think they do. If they're going to rely on that healing, which they almost certainly will, that's what those gods do well at, and they got to keep in the back of their mind that DeathPanter is going to be chipping away at that. So is maniaKK. He has the Pestilence already. Both teams have invested quite a bit into slowing down some of that healing on the other side, because it is a tier and an Arachne to worry about, but maniaKK is also going to be doing a ton of healing in that big baby form, so got to slow that down as well.
3-man grouping in the mid lane from Team Queso. Of course, that's being matched from Simplicity. Genetics and DeathPanter showing phase, but Froisan, he's never too far away. That Ratatoskr rolled, able to cover a decent portion of ground. Gold Fury not available just yet, though. It's mostly just been these mini skirmishes over the left mid Harpies.
Able to grab him with the Abduct through space and time, brings DeathPanter down to half HP, but Froisan is the one to keep your eyes on. He's found a knockup, and he's found himself a target, but Warchi makes it back through the portal, so he should be A-okay. Now it's maniaKK stomping onto 2. Genetics trying to get into position, but the tier 2 tower is safety, and the portal is safety for Warchi, so Simplicity will find nothing more.
This could be bad news bears, though, for Team Queso, because that red buff from Simplicity is right about to spawn, and a lot of ultimates just got forced from Queso, but not too sure that Simplicity feel all that confident sticking around. I guess that they also had to invest a decent bit, plus maniaKK's rotation all the way over from the solo lane is never easy to just walk away from, but maniaKK's done a great job, I think, of catching back up to Julio when you compare it to the fact that he had to deal with so much pressure early on. Things seem to have stabilized for the better over in the solo side of the map, that now we are starting to see some of these impactful team rotations for maniaKK, because if maniaKK isn't there, Julio, or excuse me, WorstTurttle, Warchi, and Dracomarino very likely try to kill DeathPanter.
I think they'd have been willing to look for the dive in that situation. As Warchi gets abducted, he doesn't have his beads. That is the only thing that Simplicity did win, was the relic situation in the last fight, but he ends up not being under too much duress, though DeathPanter does chunk him down. So that's one more thing to watch. I also think you got to watch with these Hunters, Taco. They have been left entirely alone this game. They're level 19, tied with the solo laners, and fully built out almost. They're scary.
This is the EU Classic right now, Finch. I'm calling it ahead of time.
Okay.
Because we have a low kill count scoreline.
Yes.
21 minutes deep. We've seen a little bit of action, but some really strong disengages from both teams to not really permit for picks going in either side's favor. I'm just trying to make sure Dracomarino isn't looking to change that before I finish my sentence, but I'm being serious here. I honestly think that this is all going to boil down to one really big objective team fight, because these respawn timers are already starting to build up. Checkio and StreakUp as well. I mean, these are late game hyper carries that are hitting their late game stride because they've been allowed to farm freely for 21 minutes now.
Remember this last fight, Taco? Queso did get the objective, but they lost on the backside handily. Dracomarino is already down to half HP as the Fury does go down, but as Froisan wants to keep the fight going. Checkio low, Checkio gone! maniaKK catches him very early on. Warchi makes it through the portal, yes, but what about Julio? He's been knocked up, slowed, and the rest of the team's right here to follow up.
Unstable Vortex, though, not going to find a home on anybody just yet. WorstTurttle now pushing up the mid lane. Seems to have diverted the attention of Simplicity for the moment. WorstTurtle still pushing deeper and deeper into Simplicity's territory, but they don't seem to have noticed that this Arachne has gone that far up ahead. DeathPanter now, the sole member there, looking to play defense against WorstTurtle, but he's just looking to give comms, I think. He's trying to let his team know, hey, this guy's at our back camps, this guy's taking your speed buff, let's just do this Pyromancer. And
they were able to secure the objective, though it does cost them their speed. That must hurt for Froisan, but the Pyromancer's pretty good too on the back end of that, so they are able to at least get that objective, but they can find nothing more. I wonder how much more they can at least look for in the back end, because it doesn't feel like that's enough of a win yet for Simplicity.
But that was a bigger swing of gold in Queso's favor in comparison to Simplicity. The bounty that they got from that Pyromancer is minimal in comparison to what all of Queso just received from the Gold Fury, and so I think that's something important to factor in, because I'm not really paying much mind to a 2K gold lead 23 minutes in, but I am paying attention to Dracomarino getting crab grabbed.
And then getting immediately blown up. The damage from DeathPanter was huge, and StreakUp was right there to follow. Checkio now into trouble as well. He will dash away, and maniaKK wants the blade to catch him under the tower. Aegis is good to buy him a moment, but it's only a moment. maniaKK now on a killing spree, and where can WorstTurttle afford to land? He runs away using the webs, and Simplicity will instead switch their focus to Julio.
Decent damage, though, from Warchi onto the core of Simplicity. Julio now, it's a 1v5 situation. Everybody just looking to swarm him. Warchi just tossing out Unstable Vortexes left, right, and center, hoping that they connect, but this T2 tower is not going to be standing for much longer here, Finch. It's already gone. StreakUp making quick work of it.
They should indeed keep going. There's only 3 members of Team Queso still around. WorstTurtle is the only one that's in position. They just got one more member back. Only Checkio that they're missing now. But this Phoenix is slowly being whittled away. Queso still have time, though, to get in before the Phoenix actually goes down. But not in time. That will be the first Firebird secure, but what about the fight on the back end? StreakUp low, but WorstTurtle lower. maniaKK catches him, and now it's Julio who's too far forward. No Lawbringer available. You are not the law, not here, but he just barely gets out.
Beautiful portal from Warchi, gonna save the life of his solo laner, but only for a moment. maniaKK here to spoil the fun. Massive through space and time. Tired of that big baby running around. He's gonna get sent back to the fountain, no problem.
Simplicity, though, have done a great job to secure the objective. Whoa, Checkio uses the beads. Was he hit? I don't know if that was just to keep it the chase or perhaps he missed it, as Froisan's going to linger to stop the chase, and that's enough for a full disengage from Simplicity.
Your Titan is under attack.
I noticed there's no vision on that fire giant. And I'm only saying this because we saw it happen so often yesterday with a lot of console teams. What do you think are the odds of Queso? Well, I guess this idea is kind of out the window now. I was going to say, maybe they go for the Fire Giant. The Enhanced Fire Giant could definitely be good enough to bring them back. As it currently stands, having their Phoenix already be sieged this early on into a match, without the Fire Giant even being needed, that just shows some of the push power potential that Chronos brings to the table.
It absolutely does, and they were able to take that Phoenix without any trouble. I like the idea of maybe being able to get that FG. It was a full back from Simplicity, but just as little information as Simplicity had, so did Queso. Maybe they didn't know. just how open it was. But Taco, have you seen enough from WorstTurttle on this Arachne? He's 1-2 right now, and all he did was steal some buffs.
It's not so much WorstTurtle's Arachne, as much as I'm paying mine to Chekio on the Xbalanque. Simplicity have been smothering him, very much like what they have been doing to Dracomarino here. Great poke onto this Bacchus, and now Chekio, we've seen this so many times already, on the run from this Vamana. Great portal from Warchi, keeping in mind to keep the Hunter safe.
He has not had an opportunity yet to really do his damage in these fights. He's got the build for it. He'll certainly swing if he has some time, as Warchi drops through space and time, and the portal is there to catch out Genetics. I just don't know if that's really the target they're looking for the lockdown. They would need quite a bit to fully burn him. Julio does bring him back towards Chekio, but the Scare's blessing on himself, but that means a two-man knockup on the back end comes out from Froisan, but through the wall goes Warchi. That gets his team out, and now they want to turn around onto maniaKK.
Khepri ultimate burned at last, though. I think Queso have definitely been struggling with trying to find a way to force the Scarab's Blessing out of Genetics, and, well, they got it in the end there, and fortunately enough, no one died in the process, although it did cost Warchi those purification beads, but a Janus without beads, not exactly worst case here.
If there's some delayed obvious CC through space and time, can certainly work in a pinch, but if he's caught off guard, he's going to wish that he had those beads as WorstTurttle is lurking. I wonder if they know that this bug is right here behind the corner as they bring down the Gold Fury low, but not going to be able to out-secure those bombs from DeathPanter. Agni pretty good.
I want to touch back, though, on what you just asked me on WorstTurtle's Arachne here.
Right.
I think it's been two big things. maniaKK has done a fantastic job at zoning Chekio away from being a relevant member of the fights, oftentimes even leading to Chekio dying. And these two deaths that Chekio has had, it's been a 4v5 power play fight from Simplicity every single time to immediately follow that. Without that big Xbalanque damage coming through, a lot of Queso just kind of falls flat on their face here, and that's the position that WorstTurtle has also been stuck in, because he's not getting the benefit of working into the backline from Darkest Night, and with a Khepri having that Scare's Blessing, he can't full commit to DeathPanter either.
That's right, they'll just get revived as Dracomarino is in trouble. Through space and time committed from Warchi, but up into the air yet again goes Froisan, and he does want the knock-up onto the Bacchus. He's got some shields there to help him out, but it isn't enough. StreakUp gets that kill. DeathPanter gets a second as Julio goes down as well. Simplicity cleaning up Queso, and now they're ready to come back towards the Fire Giant.
Not all doom and gloom, though, if you're Team Queso. That right side Phoenix has at least had a chance to respond. This enhanced Fire Giant, though, sitting about 30% health. Can't tell if WorstTurtle's trying to make his way in there or not, but Froisan could look like he's about to die.
Froisan is going to have the Scarab's Blessing on top of him, but the Fire Giant is low. Froisan does eventually get popped. That actually brings him back into the fight with everyone else. StreakUp finds WorstTurttle and finally cleans him up, and now Warchi's too far forward, blown up by DeathPanter, and Simplicity now have a chance, but they're too low. They've given up the Fire Giant, and even though it cost them their lives, Queso have kept the objective standing.
He's already started regenning way too quickly, and with that, Simplicity are just going to have to sit on Fire Giant for another time, but the team fights have still been very one-sided from my perspective, Finch. I think that Simplicity have just been super controlling and done a great job at toggling their player focus to whoever is trying to threaten the backline.
For me, it feels like what's happening is all the fights are starting with picks on Dracomarino. He's died 4 times, and so often he just gets locked down at the front of the fight, and then if he does live, Froisan can chase him down, as Fire Giant has now been committed to. They're going to send Froisan into the front line first with his ultimate to try and zone everybody away. Fire Giant's still low. They're holding it low, and they finally secure the objective. And yet again, Dracomarino takes some damage. He jumps away, but now without his flop, he might be in a whole mess of trouble. There was no abduct to stop the belch, but they do have the knockup and the slow.
Dracomarino still looking for a way out,
Yet
but
again.
Warchi just a little bit too late on the trigger fingers. Think he might have also just respawned and shot that through space and time from base.
Yeah, Warchi died on that last engagement they had, but another Fire Giant for Simplicity, another clean team fight, and now look at how heavily they're disengaging. WorstTurttle is in the jungle. I wonder if they recognize it, because they're just running all the way back, not even backing.
DeathPanter has a full-out squad playing bouncer duty for him right now. He's anytime you see his health bar even begin to get the slightest little tick of damage, immediately Genetics on top of his mid laner. You've got maniaKK, who's already harassing all of it. Feels like maniaKK is zoning out WorstTurttle, Chekio, and Warchi all at the same time. And it almost makes you wonder, how is a team with a Janus struggling so much to try and get into the enemy team's backline? And it really just boils down to maniaKK doing a phenomenal job on this baby.
He's played really well. I want to give plenty of credit to Genetics as well, though, on this Khepri. 0-10, a part of so many of these engagements so far, and playing a real monster frontline for this team. The roots have been great. The Abduct are there. He's quick to drop down the Scarab's Blessing as well if that's needed. Simplicity have made this a difficult nut to crack for Queso. And look at where WorstTurttle is. You talked about this already. 3,000 player damage, the least in the game. That's just someone who hasn't even been able to get to a target all game long. In 31 minutes, he hasn't been able to find anyone to try and fight.
Simplicity are just zoning him out of the fights. They are
Entirely.
not allowing Arachne to do Arachne things. They let him have his fun with the early buff invades, but
Sure.
if we had... I think even if WorstTurttle had realized that that's all he would get to offer in this match, we might have seen him looking to play even more aggressively on some of the other buffs instead.
It is still a full build Arachne though, so if this armor breaks even a little bit for Simplicity, this excellent zoning they've done shows any weaknesses, and WorstTurttle can weave his way in, then he can certainly still cause a lot of problems. This is not entirely over yet, but so far, 32 minutes in, you want way more than 3k damage out of your Arachne. I mean, it's just not enough.
Yeah, even Dracomarino has had an easier time applying damage. Of course, that's still left a decent amount to be desired on for this Bacchus, but heads up, Froisan already up in the air.
And Chekio already low, has to use the beads just to disengage, but that's the weakened right side Phoenix already down. Warchi has already used his portal through space and time as well, all just to disengage. A clean start for Simplicity. It cost them a couple of blinks and an ultimate from Froisan and maniaKK, but that's about it.
This is just clean from
Yeah.
Simplicity the whole way through. They look like a really well-coordinated unit.
And it shouldn't be that big a surprise, right? This is a team with a ton of talent. Genetics has played for a long time. DeathPanter and maniaKK, both SPL caliber players. I mean, this is what you expect.
They still need to be careful, though. I think a single Fearless combination into like an Intoxicate would really open up the doorway for WorstTurttle to finally have his chance to shine.
Yeah.
Because all he needs is a couple of seconds. And I mean
agree.
literally a couple of seconds. And whoever he goes on, whether it's StreakUp or DeathPanter or Froisan, I can assure you they will most likely die.
Yeah, look
But
at all that attack speed, Taco. Everything but Transcendence is attack speed.
he just needs that chance.
He has been able to get it. Only did 500 damage in that last engagement. So keep your eyes on if the bug can find a way in this time. Doesn't have Blink either, so the initiations will be even harder. But now he's got maniaKK who's pushed in forward, and that's a target he can stick to. A nice stun comes out from the mantle. But this time we see what the Arachne can do. Shredded right through the Vamana. And Warchi cleans it up by going through the portal. And now they have a chance to lock down StreakUp as well. He has the Aegis, yes, and a nice stun to turn it around. That sets up for the damage from Froisan and from DeathPanter.
But check out Warchi, who's trying to act on his own accord and just gets spotted out and tangled up by Simplicity. He'll be sent back to the fountain as well. Purification beads, though, pulled by Julio onto DeathPanter, and now StreakUp without an Aegis, he could be the next target.
Chekio's the next target. He's got Aegis, but the Abduct is a little bit better. Beads gets him out, and Froisan, that seals the deal. Even through the darkest of nights coming out from Chekio, even through the ultimate from the Xbalanque, they don't care. In fact, they've got to get to the Titan as there's minions pouring in. Mid lane Phoenix shall go down as well, but Simplicity aren't ready to end just yet.
As long as WorstTurttle is alive and Julio and Dracomarino are there to help play backup, that could be the setup that WorstTurttle needs in order to bring this one down. Also, maniaKK not being there to frontline, I think, is a really risky move from Simplicity to just look for the game end there.
Yes, that's a good point. Without having that extra frontline presence, and then Simplicity want to back off. And the reason they don't have it is because poor maniaKK sat next to the bug a little bit too long, and WorstTurttle was able to shred right through him, which is what he's been waiting for an opportunity to do all game. But we've highlighted maniaKK and Genetics. What about Froisan, man? He's played so well for Simplicity too. Up at the top of the player damage chart for his team. His initiations have been perfect and patient as well.
For subbing in, I mean,
Right.
he almost looks like he should just be main roster right
I
now.
agree.
He's doing some work right now on this Ratatoskr, and I think that it's great that Simplicity are able to have a sub like this, where someone that you can rely on to fulfill kind of a similar duty as to what we saw Fails doing. I mean, he's already playing the Ratatoskr.
That's right. So he's filling in for the team quite well. And not a name that I particularly recognize myself. You might be more familiar than I, Taco, with that scene. But for someone who I haven't seen as much of, he's absolutely stepped up when his name was called here by Simplicity.
Decently worked in as well for Simplicity there. I thought for a second that maybe Warchi was going to toss up the idea of random through space and time, see if there's a possibility of stealing, but Warchi probably just rather hold on to that one for the ultimate base defense. But with the way things are looking, Finch, I mean, Team Queso, they are definitely on their last legs here.
Can we see the other chart really quick? I wonder, is damage taken on that chart? I actually am not familiar with how it looks. I want to see if we can at least find out. So far, DeathPanter and StreakUp have been so comfortable this game. If there's a way that we could see, I'd want to know if they've been under any duress at all, truly, this game. There's not been a way for Queso to make it to that back line to them.
I'd say at least 7,000.
That's about all you do
Each.
say? Yeah.
Each. Well, StreakUps will probably be higher because as a Chronos, since he's got rewind, he's able
Sure.
to play a little bit more forward-facing. But DeathPanter has just had genetics as his personal babysitter the entire game, which is how things should be.
Yes.
Mind you, I don't think that there's any problem with genetics just looking to cater solely to DeathPanter, because DeathPanter, this is all he's got to do right there onto Dracomarino. Just look for that steady, consistent poke. Keep applying that Divine Ruin. Don't allow Team Queso the benefits of being able to leisurely walk back into their fountain and get those easy tick-ups to full health.
But Froisan's keeping WorstTurttle stuck in middle lane as he threatens the respawn of that middle Phoenix. That sets up a 4v4 on the right side for this Firebird that's already fallen once before and should not be too difficult for the team to remove. They move in with the minion wave right away. And Chakio's dash has already been expended, but an aggressive push in from Team Queso was met immediately by Froisan's damage. WorstTurttle ends up sending himself back to base. Warchi will join him quickly as StreakUp has too much damage. Knockup doesn't land from Froisan, but poor Chakio gets delayed, and StreakUp and maniaKK work together a rampage for the Chronos, and Simplicity should be able to take this game.
Chekio's beyond used to that view, though, Finch. He's had maniaKK over and over again, just relentlessly running into him, just not allowing the Xbalanque a second to breathe. And I think it definitely made a very huge impact from maniaKK, just bringing all that solo lane power and just frontline capability here for Simplicity.
Yeah, I think that Chekio never really got an opportunity to do much of that game. He's not the only one. Neither did WorstTurttle.
Yeah.
That front line did an amazing job this game, that I would say, of making sure those backline carries were completely comfortable.
And that's what you love to see, especially if you're, DeathPanter or StreakUp in that sort of situation.
Absolutely.
Not having to worry about an Arachne or this Janus or anybody, really.
They had a comfortable game. Let's see if they can do it again, though. And let's get the thoughts on the desk and how they saw that game won.
Thank you very much, Finch and Taco. Queso just didn't have an answer right there for Simplicity. In particular, WorstTurtle's Arachne, we were really excited about it. We said it did really well last week. If you're going to second pick a jungler, it can't have 1,502 damage 26 minutes in.
No, certainly not.
That's not going to work.
And you were talking about how it might have been off of the first blood gank on
It was
that
all there.
solo lane, but after that, it just kind of went downhill, unfortunately, for WorstTurtle. But going all uphill for Froisan on this Ratatoskr, ended the game at 6-1-10.
What an impressive performance from a substitute. And as you mentioned, jungle is in a role where you can just plug and play and assume that everything's going to go really well. I was a little bit worried about giving him a pick that has to do well in the early game, but he really did just that. His early game was solid, and in his ability to keep staying consistent with that damage throughout the game. He ends the game with the top damage on his team, I think.
I think what happens is, like, you give a god, or rather a player, a global pressure god, and then he could just kind of be so comfortable with it, right? Like, even if he's out of position, he can get out of it. If somebody from the enemy team is out of position, he'll punish them for that. And that would happen to be a lot of WorstTurtle's kind of transgressions, trying to make these offensive plays early from the Arachne, and then getting picked off one too many times.
And Queso did a really good job of controlling objectives early on, even when it was 2-2, and in that mid game, they were really doing well with buff invades and getting gold furies and things of that nature. But you have to be able to win team fights at some point in order to win the game. And I just don't think Queso ever got to that part of the game where they could actually win a fight.
No, definitely not. There was a lot of control also on the side of Simplicity. The Agni, the Khepri, the Chronos, Ratatoskr even, knock-up from maniaK's Vamana. So I don't know how WorstTurttle could get in there without the assistance of Warchi that also tried to make a lot of offensive plays. And that happened to be the problem for Queso, is that their front line was just too offensive-minded. They need to peel it back for game number 2.
Warchi did the most damage in the game in a losing effort in the mid lane. WorstTurttle does less damage than Khepri for genetics. That's usually not going to net you a victory if your jungler is doing less than the enemy support, especially when it's the defensive option, as we kind of highlighted in the picks and bans. So is it as simple as just give WorstTurtle something else and everything's going to go much smoother this time around?
It's possible. Maybe have him rotate a little bit more towards the dual lane, really enable this SmiteVOD to just really pop off. If you first pick the SmiteVOD, it's basically trying to invade purple buffs, red buffs, wanting to get off to a great start, especially when you pair it up with a Bacchus after the secondary ban phase. The problem was WorstTurtle leaned on the solo lane for the first blood, but never really made a presence in that dual lane.